Cool. So you probably know a lot about this stuff, but I'm just going to go over it from sort of my simple intuitive understanding, the way I've journeyed through this, and hopefully somebody out there will learn something from it. Does that sound good?
Absolutely, man. Rip right into it. I'm
Cool.
all about it.
All right. So uh let's see here. I'm obsessed with free energy, anti-gravity, and anything that goes along with that. So um one of the interesting things that I've noticed in a lot of podcasts, if you're looking at, say, a How Put Off podcast with Joe Rogan or Sonny White or people like that, they're often relating this to they're talking about Alcubierre warp drives and whatnot, and they're relating this to Casimir plates. And I haven't seen a specific connection for dumb dummies like me drawn between the two things. And so hopefully I can draw that connection. Um, Another thing is, why do these ideas of energy from the vacuum and anti-gravity often go together? So hopefully I can answer that question as well. So let me just get started talking about the Casimir force. So here's a simple illustration of, you got two plates hanging down from the ceiling on strings. And if you put those plates into a bowl of water and you play a sound into that water, or you boil that water, the plates start to slam together. The reason being that there's a whole lot more space outside the plates for waves to happen, and there's less room for waves to happen between the two plates. Um, and it's been thought like, hey, why don't we take that force that's called the Casimir force and let's use that for energy? But the trouble is, it's kind of like saying, well, why don't I take this dumbbell that I have and lay it on something and harvest the pressure that that dumbbell exerts for energy? The problem is that it only goes one way. You know what I mean? The plates just slam together, then you have to pull them apart again. So it's not a very like helpful reaction for generating any usable work for free. Um, Now I should define, I'm trying to speak to the newbies who, like myself, I've only been studying this for 6 months. So
Oh
I
god, yeah. I like 3 years. 3 years.
3 years. So
Make
you're a little ahead of me, but that's cool. So I failed to mention the force. You don't have to have water. You don't have to be hanging these plates in water. The force happens as long as that width between the two plates is a 50th of a human hair or less. It happens anywhere. They say it happens in the quantum vacuum, but that doesn't mean you need to do it in a vacuum chamber. The quantum vacuum is kind of deceptively named because it implies emptiness, but it's really just free space that we're talking about here. You can't get out of it, actually. There's no, well, maybe you could, I don't know, but there, as far as standard daily life goes, you can't get out of the quantum vacuum. It's just, it is the quality of free space that there's these little ripples of energy everywhere all the time, and that's the resting state of the universe. So Sonny White comes on Joe Rogan, and he's talking about creating a solid state Casimir battery. So let me show what that looks like and my understanding of what he's trying to say. So what I think he was talking about was, he gave this picture of a lagoon, and I'm going to edit his analogy a tiny bit. Picture a circular island out in the Pacific Ocean. Maybe this was a volcano and the volcano's eroded away, and all that's left is the rim, and you have coconut trees on that island. Okay. Now, two Casimir plates or four Casimir walls are like that island. And electrons are like coconuts. Every bit of metal that you put into the walls has electrons in it. And um, it's almost like there's a tiny little island in the middle of this lagoon created by the ring. And that would be the antenna. So he puts an antenna in between two Casimir plates. And the electrons in those walls are bombarded by the waves of the quantum vacuum. And that those ripples, they produce a shift of probability that you might find the electrons that are in the walls out here in the middle of the lagoon. So it's almost like coconuts from the island are being blown onto this little tiny island in the middle. And if you think about an abundance of electrons, that's basically what a battery is. So you could run a wire from that tiny little island through a light bulb or whatever it might be that you want to do work, and then back to the main bulk of the island, and you have a closed loop Casimir battery that doesn't have any moving parts. So we're not slamming plates together, but we're just driving electrons with the wind of the quantum vacuum to the antenna, and then we're creating a circuit out of it.
I
So,
think
yeah, go ahead.
I like your analogy first, but I was gonna say I think the lagoon aspect, and maybe I'm mistaken, but is important to the point of like the ocean can flow in to a spot like where the island needs the ocean to perhaps flow. So like the circle might the close aspect right off the rip might prevent that. And then also I was, and again, I'm not, you can call anything whatever you like. I'm not 100% not nitpicking you, but
Yeah, no, go for it.
the gravity manipulation definitely versus anti-gravity is it's not necessarily anti, like it localized, you're mitigating localized space-time. So it's
No, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. So anti-gravity, I mean, I'm good at like dodging the dirty words in some areas. Like I keep saying quantum vacuum instead of ether, like yay,
oh, I
you
use
know,
ether. I
the
use ether 100%.
the three Neil deGrasse Tyson fans who are listening to me right now won't be mad at me because of that part, but yeah, so I said anti-gravity. But yeah, it's that's a very good point. What I'm interested in studying and what I think anti-gravity is not any sort of output of like a anti-gravity force, but yeah, rather, well, let me just get into what I think gravity is.
Oh
And
no, I didn't mean to derail you. Absolutely,
no, you're
absolutely.
not derailing me at all. The lagoon that you're talking about, I think absolutely this lagoon that's created by Casimir plates, there is ether in there as well. There's quantum vacuum fluctuations in there as well. They're just limited in scope by the metal, and that creates a low pressure zone. And I think that is one and the same with gravity. And so what I'm saying is all of the, and this doesn't tend to show up well on camera. Maybe it's okay. I don't know. That's just a random sort of illustration of quantum vacuum fluctuations, but it's a little lacking in that. Sure, I've got different frequencies on there for different colors of light, but they're all in a neat row, and so what's actually going on in the vacuum, from what I hear, is that you've got light headed every which way. And you have, these are potentials, these are like sub photon level ripples of light. And you might think, well, how does this have any effect on physical material at all? I mean, the Casimir force proves that that's a thing. But unless you introduce some sort of asymmetry by giving yourself a calm lagoon of quantum vacuum or ether, you can't get much out of it. You've got to sort of do something to polarize it or introduce an asymmetry. And that's actually kind of what I think gravity is when there's a planetary body in the ether, um, it displaces all of these fluctuations that want to happen. And so at the surface, you get a gradient from empty space to occupied space that's sort of blocking these potential paths. And the pressure of that light, the squeeze of these potentials from the top of your head all the way to the edge of the universe is what's holding you down to the ground, in my opinion.
I would agree with that. I would stack maybe our awareness of like light being a variable as one example of like something that could maybe impact the signals that we pick up on, like just an antenna that would go, like you were saying, from maybe even our feet or beneath us all the way up to who knows, infinity. Like whatever out there in between here and infinity might be either speeding up or slowing down the signal. I think the variable factor right there is
I
dependent.
and you're talking about awareness, so basically consciousness, right?
Yeah, yeah, for the most part of, yeah, and pretty much to that, to where we're at right now on physically this meat space of
Meat
is
space.
of where I'm in our meat suits
Right.
versus like astral all energy us having the same exact conversation somewhere in infinity, which I personally believe is going on.
No, that's a fascinating idea. I mean, I think that points to, you know, out there on it, maybe at the edge, maybe that's where all of this is encoded and we're sort of experiencing a meat suit projection of the real thing, or or whatever it might be.
Like we get more of that, the curve of the gradient to like how aware we are of it, perhaps. I'm not, that's, I
Quite
mean,
possibly. I mean, if you look at like levitating saints or something like that. Well, you posted a video the other day on a chat that we're both in that it was from Demystify Psi. And or was it? I heard this somewhere and it might have been from a video that I clicked on after clicking on that video, but whatever it is, whatever the case, you're already levitating because the electron clouds around every atom that compose your body, they're mostly empty space, and so your head, so to speak, is just sort of levitating above your feet by virtue of just the physical interactions. And so yeah, I think that man, I wish I could prove it, and I wish I had personal experiences to back it up, but I do think there's an absolute link between consciousness, gravity, and maybe even levitation, things like that.
I well, according to uh Sir Dave and others, if you're not in the right mindset for whatever, like then you can't get anything to happen. But
I believe it.
uh, also to your point, and from just even a super base granular level, like we don't actually physically come in contact with anything. So if you could just figure a way to like Casimir that space up,
Right.
I could see just naturally kind of making that happen without any sort of like tech assistance.
I've been thinking about that a lot. There is already magnetic levitation, very doable with superconductivity. And you do you remember that electret thing that I posted where the guy made his own electret? He melted some plastic and put it in between two plates of a capacitor and charged the heck out of the capacitor while the plastic cooled, then discharged the capacitor, took the plastic out, and he had an electric equivalent of a magnet called an electret. And you can put it up to a plant, and like a magnet, the plant leaf will just like stick to it, or he can turn on his faucet and bend the stream of water with it. It's incredible. So it's an electric magnet. and all you need to do to make it is a capacitor and melt some polyethylene or something like that.
Well, that sounds interesting, and that kind of would be the same if you could gate that or pulse it, that would kind of be the same metric that would be used for Alcubierre also, if I get how that works correctly. Like it
Possibly. I'm so fascinated by a static electric field and and magnetic too, but seeing it electric was just a whole new revelation for me because all of our industrial revolution is built on, you know, the magnetic motor. Well, have we ever stopped to think that we can affect materials that are not just, you know, metals? Like we can affect water, we can make it do work with something like an electret. I don't know. There's so many unexplored opportunities with that, I think. I'm sorry. I'm getting lost in my own headspace and so we're kind of talking about anti-gravity. I was talking about my idea of gravity, and I know that there's a bunch of other people out there smarter than me who could point out 100 things wrong with that vision of gravity that I just showed. However, I would urge them to take a look at things like Hal Puthoff's gravity as an emergent quantum entropic force. That's more or less what I understand he's saying in that paper. There's another guy named Daniel Carney that that I think is a Russian guy. He's a YouTuber, makes videos like, "Hello there. Today we're exploring a new thing in
Yeah,
physics."
yes.
That
Yep.
guy.
That was spot on, man. Yeah, I love that guy.
He did a thing on like popcorn gravity, referencing that Daniel Carney paper. And again, they're saying something like this, where you just boom, put a planet in that sea of ether, uh, and they wouldn't call it ether, but in the ether, and light imparts inertia. That is a proven fact. And so, if you've got all this light zinging around everywhere, and we know a basic fact like physical matter displaces that light, I think physical matter is more complicated than just that. It's probably light itself as well, like entrapped light. But let's just say, let's not even have to consider that right at the moment and just say physical matter displaces the fluctuations of light. Then you get a buildup of pressure around something. The bigger and more massive it is, and generally, if you line up things that are reflective with things that are massive, it kind of tracks. Like a big lump of iron is going to be a whole lot more massive than a big lump of plastic. Um, and maybe the reason is because it's interacting with the ether. So let's see here.
The
And
permanent magnet part too of the core being a magnet, I think, is crucial.
right,
Forever energy.
that's probably true. Yeah. Um, so so how could you create a displacement of this ether or a polarization of this ether? And that is where I paid close attention to Sal, uh, Dr. Salvatore Pais. I haven't met him, so I'll call him that. But he said something very interesting in his interview with Daniel Davis. Do you know Daniel Davis?
Rings a bell, but I can't picture it.
I think he's friends with Jack Sarfati. And he has a few YouTube videos. My favorite one is his interview with Sal Pais. But Sal says in that interview, check out Polarization of the Ether by Herman David Froning. Just look at what he wrote about it. It's very interesting, and I'll just stop at that. That's what he said. So I checked that out, and I found something very interesting. So I found a paper that talks about toroidal coils, and he had, a chart here with this toroidal coil, and this is the field that you would expect to see with a toroidal coil. And when we're talking about toroidal coils, we're just talking about you got a donut and you've got one wire snaking around the donut. and coming back, and then you just run power through that. That would be a toroidal solenoid, so it traps a magnetic field in a ring because it loops it back on itself. And he was thinking kind of like a rodent coil, but slightly different. What if we made two of these and wound them against each other? Okay. So we're canceling out the magnet, the electromagnet, by looping another electromagnet through it. And that's engineering a zero. Or you could say, if we look at a wave, if you and I are holding a jump rope and I go like this with a jump rope and you go like this with the jump rope at the same time, those two waves are going to travel towards each other. This one's going to be a trough, this one's going to be a peak. And in the middle, they're going to flatten out. And at that moment, the rope is completely flat. And it's as if there's no energy present in space. So we freeze frame there and then start the clock again. And then the waves pass through each other and they keep on going. Well, if you run magnetic waves into each other, also you have through the center of the toroid electric waves going this way and this way. And this device with the counter wound toroid, you have electric waves running into each other through the center as well. So you're basically doing a bunch of work. And from a conventional electromagnetic point of view, you're getting nothing done, right? Everything's just getting shielded. And so they thought, okay, well, if we do that and we take some measurements, what are we going to see? And so this is what they saw. So they saw huge spikes of magnetic energy outside the toroid and nothing on the inside. And that's a really interesting scenario because that shouldn't be, but that's, if you're familiar with the Aharonov-Bohm effect, that's kind of almost the exact same situation where I believe they wound two, counter toroidal solenoids, and then they fired some electrons, and they found that when the solenoid was powered, the electron beam would be deflected a tiny bit, and when it was off, it wouldn't be deflected. And so they saw magnetism where there should be no magnetism, and it just didn't make any sense, but it was because the potentials were taking over. Well, my way of thinking about this is that just like the jump rope, you're folding energy out of space and into time, so to speak. Almost like if you think about every location in space having three axes and one little node that is attached to time, maybe you can, sort of like a rubber band, stretch energy out on that time axis and store it there to be unleashed somewhere else. So one of the more fascinating parts in this paper was when he made a toroid. Let me show you what it kind of looked like first.
Well, it'd be like 4 or 8 ropes all at the same time, right? Going opposite, like even the diagram of the toroid that you had kind of shows like your waves canceling each other a little bit.
Right. That's what I'm picturing, is just like a bunch of electric waves, running a bunch of jump ropes in a sort of, yeah, in a sort of pattern that accounts for everything, folds all of that electric and magnetic energy
Well,
up into time space as opposed to space time, hopefully. Yeah.
when you clear it to zero, it's like that's the whole, like, Bearden is always ripping on that. Like it's not really zero.
Right.
Like there's definitely some leftovers.
And that's the thing, is that electrical engineers are taught vector analysis. And again, I'm new to all of this. I'm not a math whiz, but I think I've understood this. I think I feel like I know enough to say this. They're taught to work in vector analysis, which is telling you, okay, you've got a wave coming this way and a wave coming this way. And at that point where they're crossing completely opposed to each other, you've got a zero sum game. There's nothing there. There's no resultant. of that interaction. But originally, Maxwell wrote everything in quaternions, right? And you brought up the imaginary earlier, right? So, in my best effort to understand numbers, you've got the number line, you've got positive numbers going this way, negative numbers going this way, zero in the middle. You've got this other axis of imaginary numbers. So, you could say that, oh, I'm getting lost here. Sorry. Okay, so it's been a long week. I'm a teacher and I just started back at school, so my head
Oh,
is
no, no,
full.
right on.
And I
Absolutely.
just keep losing my train of thought. I get excited, but I'm also like a little nervous because I'm never on camera. So, thanks for bearing with me.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so you've got these imaginary numbers. You can conceive of numbers on a 2D plane, and that's what imaginary numbers allows you to do. They're two-dimensional numbers. Um, and then you can add J and K or something, and you've got a three axis space of numbers, and that's kind of how electricity is dealt with mathematically. And then quaternions are four-dimensional, so they have a time component, and that's what was cut off and thrown away by later um, engineers of electromagnetism. They thought, okay, we don't need nothing's happening of any physical significance here when we've crossed two things into each other. So let's just chop it off and throw it away. And then we get Maxwell's equations, which were not actually Maxwell's original equations, but they're sort of the neutered version that allows us to do what we can do now with electricity, which is pretty remarkable, but there's more, I think.
Heaviside. The Heaviside was the one that lobotomized him.
Right. So this is a stretched out torus. This is kind of an attempt at drawing it that I made, but if you stretch the torus out, counterwound toroidal solenoid, you get, well, at least Herman David Froning, George Hathaway, and Blair Cleveland, no relation, measured magnetism in one side of the toroid coming out, but nothing on the other side. And so they thought that was very strange, but it was a sort of asymmetry. So my thinking is, if you wind two toroids into each other, electrify them so that you're running electricity and magnetism into itself and folding that energy up, it creates a stress or a polarization in the ether. And maybe that could sort of cause this to bubble out. And
Well, I would argue that they measured magnetism on one side, but if they had a device to measure negative magnetism, that they would probably track that on the opposite.
they said at the end of the paper, it was a very kind of quick deal. They did it. They even have pictures of their setup. It was sort of like in a back parking lot. Like they just opened up the garage of their lab and they just did this in the parking lot. They were like, we need some Josephson junctions and some other more expensive stuff to test this out to really confirm it. And then it just went dark. And I think that's probably because they got somewhere with it. George Hathaway was just on Tim Ventura a couple days ago, and he went through everything he's ever done that didn't work. But guess what he didn't mention, you know? And I'm thinking, okay, maybe it never worked and nothing came of it. But guess who else mentioned it? Andrei Pokletnov?
Again, rings a bell, but I can't
He's
put a face to it.
he's famous for rotating a superconducting disc, and his associate was smoking a pipe and blew the pipe smoke over the rotating superconducting disc and saw the smoke going up. And they thought, oh, that's weird. I wonder if it has some sort of anti-gravity effect. Legend has it that his associate went upstairs and blew his pipe smoke over the same area, on the next story up, and it levitated or it went straight up as well. So that's when they thought, okay, we've got an anti-gravity effect here. George Hathaway, who was on this paper, he helped try to replicate it according to Pokletnov's specifications and never could do it. So maybe it's made up, but guess what? Pokletnov said at the end of his Tim Ventura interview, um, Tim Ventura says, "So what's next? What are you going to do, in your quest to sort of work with gravity?" What did you say the best term is? Gravity modification or something like
Manipulation. Yeah.
manipulation? Yeah. So what's next? And he says, "I think we're going to be working on toroidal solenoids next." And Tim Ventura just kind of leaves it there and didn't ask him anything more about it. But anyways, if you can get an asymmetric stress in the ether, my thinking is that empty space, quote unquote empty space, is going to be sort of trying to wrap around that or fill that void, and kind of like soapy hands trying to grab a water balloon or something. The coil might slip this way. So I'm going to hang. Can I show it to you? I actually got one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you're right on the money with that too. Also, like the squeeze part for keep a keep a pressure on one side, and then whatever happens on the inverse is.
Sorry, I didn't have my headphones on. What were you saying there?
Oh no, I said yeah. I think you're right on the money with that. Like keep the squeeze on it, and then whatever happens on the inverse there is where your butter zone is.
We'll hope. Yeah, we'll hope to get to the butter zone. So yeah, this is the thing I've been working on for a while now. Wove this into just sheets of plastic, and hopefully you can kind of see there's yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get a good position with it.
Oh yeah, you can see the spot in between the sheets.
Yeah, where everything's crossing. So you get sort of like almost like a DNA pattern, or like an X pattern, where the black wire's crossing into the red wire, and it's sort of asymmetric. So I spent actually quite a while weaving this thing, but there's a couple loose wires that I mean, this is the wire that's woven all the way through. I just didn't leave myself enough space. So tonight, well, probably not tonight, but tomorrow, we'll be cutting this and then splicing in a new piece of wire so I can finish the toroid. And I'm thinking maybe, just maybe, I'll electrify this. I'll just hook it up to a stereo amplifier, run electricity through it, and if I hit the right frequency that resonates with this particular size, I'll get an effect, maybe. But I kind of have a feeling that it's going to take more than one, that it's going to take like 4 of these things, because I think 4 or maybe 2. I think when you fold energy up into time, you need to do interferometry with the beam that it creates. And I'm not even sure if this is going to create a coherent beam or just sort of radiate out some sort of infolded time energy. But
I,
when it comes out of time, when it folds out of time back into space, I think that's the butter zone. I think that's where you are taking advantage of all of the things that the other side has to offer, if you know what I mean. I think that if you apply a DC bias to this coil, it's like, okay, so you're feeding an AC signal in, right? And it's going above and below a level, but a DC bias will raise that level, and a negative DC bias will lower that level. And so I'm hoping to lower the level by applying a negative DC bias, and then make 2 of these coils. I have to kind of switch up my methodology here and make them out of foam, because it takes so long to thread this wire through these plastic plates. It's just a pain in the butt. So yeah.
yeah, I think kind of I like your idea, and I wonder if you put uh like one going that way and then one going that way, and then had them sitting like if you had whatever, like a magnet or like a rock or something in between, if you'd get it to something to happen with like shatter or like Hutchinson or something.
Oh, that would be interesting. Hutchison. Honestly, one of my dreams, I'm not a fan of heat. I would love to be able to transmit heat out of my house. So get two of these and interfere them, have the interference zone be in my house and just crank them. And then all the heat goes back to the coils. That would be really cool. But obviously, anti-gravity would, sorry, gravity modification would be a whole lot better, or more useful to mankind, because we already have air conditioning, but it's extremely energy intensive. But yeah, there's so much you could work on with this if it actually would work. So we'll just have to see. Because I think that the physical world has a counterpart that has everything opposite, at least at the particle level. So every electron has a positron, and the electrons are spinning right-handed and they're traveling forward in time, but the positrons are spinning left-handed and they're traveling backward in time. And so we do our electricity with electrons, but when you or anyone else creates a system with cold electricity, they're actually doing electricity by moving positrons around. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, my understanding is as soon as they come into contact with an electron, they annihilate. And that's kind of like breaking the Schwinger limit. And that's what Sal Pais is into, um, to my understanding. But he also has, can we talk about Sal Pais? He has something called the super force and supercells, and I looked at it briefly, but I don't understand it. What can you tell me about Sal Pais?
The For the super force, as far as what I get on that level is, and again, my I'm not Captain Nick super physicist, but like it would be to the imaginary number factor, it would be like an activated imaginary number, or like a etheric energy cell, or what the hell is it? The radiant energy is another term for it. But like flowing, like not a potential state like a K or whatever, like actually in some system. That's what the as I get it is just the super force is versus potential state, which is any number of options. Like you, just an example. Like I got this safety pin. It's super force safety pin. It's gonna I could use it over here and it's gonna make my arm turn to gold. Or if it's that's one superposition activated of it. Or if I do whatever and dip it in water and then touch it to my arm, then it makes it itchy. Like, all right, that's a different super separate super force, but like both of them do the same thing. It's to kind of a rough metaphor, if I'm getting it
Interesting.
correctly.
Okay. That's crazy. I heard someone say it's like the inverse Planck. And that to me, I don't know. I know Planck is a whole topic you could get into. What do you
Well,
think about?
Planck level, I think, is like personally, I think is like our perceptual like top to it right now. I think it goes way beyond that, but like to your inverse universe point, to what we see here, I like white holes is a good example to me. Like they don't really talk about them, but if I get how it works, for every what black hole that's out there, there's definitely a white hole doing the exact opposite somewhere out there. So like
Right.
that balance, and we have our microtubules have black holes in them and utilize time crystals. So that would mean that also whatever our inverse us theoretically would be operating on white holes, and we could like kind of exchange it. Like it would be the same for a device, us or whatever. Like, oh well, we're gonna take that energy up, and then like boop, it's instantly filled again. Like because we're both sides of us kind of have a surplus to it, if I'm getting it correctly.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Interesting. There's so much out there to understand.
Oh
I
man, it's super fun to learn too. That's the best part. I don't know. It's like, I don't know that there's an end point ever, but like it definitely is. It's the never ending awesome journey.
I love like how personal you make it and how because you just said that could be us or that could be a device. And I kind of think on the device level because you know, sometimes I can be a bit of a skeptic, you know what I mean? Like the one of the reasons I'm obsessed with gravity modification is because I saw it when I was a kid. I was at my cousin's house and he goes, "Whoa." He's looking out the window at like 2 a.m. My brother was there as well. We all pressed our faces against the screen and we're looking to the right. And there was a flying triangle up there, and it had like three spinning lights on each corner. And it was gracefully sort of gliding up and down below and above the tree line. And then after a while of that, one red light came on in the middle and then it just went like that without a sound, just zipped to the point where if it was not modifying gravity, anybody inside would have been just spaghetti on the wall. You know what I mean? Like it was that fast.
Or the sonic boom.
Right. No sonic boom either. Right.
How
So
did I guess? How did I guess?
yeah, no, not a single sound. It didn't make a sound. Um, so I've always had that, and I don't have to wonder, like, oh, is all this UFO stuff just a load of crap? Like, I've seen it, and I know that it's a thing. Like, I've come to believe kind of that that might have been a government craft, Um, maybe it was 1996. So, but um, I'm always, focused on the device, but I do believe that all of these um, things we're dealing with interface with consciousness and with humanity. And we don't necessarily need a device. I just need a device so that I can believe, okay, this is a real thing. And then I can move to the next level. Or if I could see somebody else build a device and manipulate, well, I guess I already did. So maybe that isn't enough, but you know, yeah.
No, I'm with you, man. Again, I would never knock anybody's personal journey for what it would take to to make whatever happen, but it's all sorts of craft. All like even maybe I'm not sure. Maybe tonight on the walk just before this, it looked like three lights, no tail light, no sound, and then right maybe 5 minutes behind it, I don't know if it was a tic tac. It was just two lights again, no sound, two
Huh.
lights going along like that. I'm grateful I see them, but I'm pretty sure they're definitely not gas powered, and I'm pretty sure that if if you see them and you wave high, or you're like you were like astounded and grateful when you saw it, I think that helps to it, but I also think there's like government made whatever government. I think there's ones that exist outside of like meat suit land, and then I think there's ones that whatever other things that are living out there have made. So like the trifecta, like personally, I think it can confuse people. Like, but
That's interesting that you have the three categories. I tend to think of it in two. One, meat suit land, and two, um interdimensional beings. But I suppose if you have interdimensional beings, that's already weird enough. Why not throw actual space aliens in there too? But yeah, again, I heard there's a leak on Reddit that a guy in in my state was tasked with okay, so I'll just say it because I already people, well, I don't know if anybody is weird trying to figure out where I'm located. I'm in Maryland, right? So Fort Detrick, Maryland is not too far from me. I pass it once in a while. I heard that there are alien bodies, according to this leaker on the internet, that he was tasked with looking at the samples and He had all kinds of details about the genetics and whatnot. I would love to just lay eyes on it and just be like, okay, that's I saw it with my own eyes. That's kind of what I need to really believe it. I'm sorry I'm that skeptical, but yeah.
I mean, the one that, I mean, aside from I may or may not have I remember a white light and floating when I was a kiddo and may or may not have got scooped up. So that's a whole separate thing. But like as an adult, me and my buddy saw over Massachusetts. It was a triangle, but like the size of a football stadium, no sound. Like, and we followed
What?
it for like, yeah, like maybe 500 feet off the ground, a couple thousand feet tops. Huge, 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 no sound. Like the lights on it, like on the edge, were like little suns. Like I've never seen an aircraft with like lights like that. But like,
I also thought the same thing. I thought those lights looked like little galaxies. They were spinning and they were throwing off sparks. And like LEDs didn't exist yet back then. Well, they existed, but nobody, all lights were pretty much just regular old incandescent light bulbs back then. And yeah, it just looks beautiful and like it had a warm glow to it.
well, nobody was looking up first. Like we followed it for like a half hour, 45 minutes. I'm like, what is going on? Like nobody is looking up. Like we're like it's dead silent. And then it got to like a dirt mall, like Walmart area, and like same as you were saying, like it started to super creep a little faster, and then it was like bing, no noise the whole time, like bing, like a little dot into the horizon, like
Oh my gosh.
legit out of Star Wars. Like I would almost compare it to a Star Destroyer, but the vibe I get wasn't bad, but it had like bay windows in the back, like. But that for me, like my friend, it really got to him on one level, but he like it really sunk in some stuff for both of us. Like, oh, there's for sure stuff out there that doesn't use gas. Like,
It's
what the hell is
incredible.
going on?
The way the one I saw zipped off also reminded me very much of Star Wars. It was exactly like that when they jumped to hyperspace or whatever. What do you think about the speed of light?
Like it's variable. I think it's variable.
Absolutely. I remember you started your interview with Sal off with, does that imply a negative light speed? I think you said something like that.
Yeah, there was one of his papers that had a c squared in it, and I didn't have the full paper pulled up, and I might still have it somewhere, but I one of the equations was right off the rip was c squared, so I'm like, and then what it came up to was something else, and then 8 pi and something. To my mind, I'm like, well, that means that there's a forward light speed and a backward light speed. Like if you
Interesting.
if you look at it for like white hole, black hole metaphor, or like pilot wave to like actual wave, or kind of similar as I get it, or like precursor zap to the actual zap. I feel like there's definitely some that holds water.
That's fascinating because I've been binging a lot of Tom Bearden and he talks a lot about that. And I've been trying to understand potentials and their relationship with real waves, with actualized waves, you might say, or observed waves, like things that we see. Okay, so we see a a ray of light coming from that light above me, and I see it come into my eye, and that takes a definite path. But every path that could have ever existed from my eye to that light bulb exists as a potential. And when the light is observed, it chooses one of these potentials, maybe. And I'm trying to understand longitudinal waves, which are sort of the potential where this point and that point, to my understanding, share a longitudinal wave. One goes forward in time, and the other goes boogada boogada, crawfish is back in time. And
Yeah.
and what exactly is going on there, and then how does it interact with matter and the Casimir force, because that would seem to indicate that it became actualized without ever having a cause.
Or that it was already actualized before it even came into play.
Right, that's another way to look at it. Anyways, the light speed thing I was thinking about, it's been put forward, this thing called the Scharnhorst effect, which is the idea that the speed of light ought to be higher in between two Casimir plates, given that there's less fluctuations in the ether happening there. There's less potentials in the ether there. So the speed of light ought to be higher. And all that that could mean for engineering, because if we can limit the speed of light in a space, we can also change the size of that space, and we can change the flow of time, because the Planck scale is the fundamental like ruler of everything. And by ruler I just mean like, the 12-inch kind of ruler, that kind of thing. Planck length in time is the fundamental unit of space, and it's set by the speed of light at the highest frequency that space can contain without collapsing, and the amount of space needed to create one of those wavelengths is a Planck length. Now, if we raise the speed of light, we alter that necessary space, and therefore we're altering the size of space itself, right?
Well, yeah, I think that would imply like the why theoretically part of it would collapse if you went exactly the speed of light. You would
Okay.
be like you would have to go a little bit either above it or below it, I think, right? To
I
get that
suppose, but
to
if
get the
you change
asymmetry.
it, like I think that the ether might create a sort of drag on photons, but also a push at the same time that sort of sets the speed of light, and that speed of light being, you know, 300,000 kilometers per second. Well, that value, the thing, that speed is just a number that has to do with 0 point fluctuations. And I feel like if it were altered, everything would get raised. You know how Hal Puthoff said, maybe we are seeing glowing objects in the sky, like orbs, because these things are manipulating the magnetic uh, permeability and electric permittivity of space-time. And so all these fluctuations that happen at the 0 point are now getting amped to the level where we can actually see them. That would mean that I'm actually arguing against myself as I'm trying to finish my sentence. Amping them up to the observable level doesn't mean changing the wavelength, I don't think. Well, actually, no, it does, because red shifting and blue shifting. So things that edit the magnetic permeability and electric permittivity of space also blue shift light. And when you blue shift 0 point fluctuations, you might blue shift them from the sub photon level to the photon level and make them observable.
Well, for the Casimir metaphor, like if you could, what if you could keep it in that perpetual? You figure out a way to flip the charge in that localization so that instead of the plates pushing, they go apart. And then that would be negative time or whatever negative energy. And then if you could keep it somewhat recursive in that almost pushing apart, but still close enough where you could anything would jitter on it and get that engine going, I think maybe that might work for you.
I think a perfect lens would do it. Put a perfect lens in between two Casimir plates, and from the photon's point of view, traversing in between those two plates, the space in between the Casimir plates would be larger on the inside than it is on the outside to a photon passing by. And then you would have this discontinuity between the space in between the Casimir plates being bigger than it is to the outside observer.
Well, right there, that would be, I agree, but right, also right there, that would prove that the speed of light is variable.
Right.
People don't want to hear that, man. No, I'm with you though, 100%. I do you if anything that you did to your photon before you jammed it into the Casimir zone would be like super boosted because instead of a million random potentials, you're down to like whatever 5,000 that you could do. So all right, stack on this 5,000, you got better chances.
I think
I think
so. The speed of light equals C equals, is it 1 over the square root of magnetic permeability and electric permittivity of free space? And so if you have something called a perfect lens, it's like a metamaterial that has a negative electric permittivity as opposed to a positive. And my understanding would be that that means that that a perfect lens, um gosh,
you just altered one of the variables right there. So definitely that should have some play on it.
and in that paper, my favorite paper with the coils, they talk about that. They talk about how they suspect that they have altered the magnetic permeability or electric permittivity of free space with the coil. They're like, maybe it happened, we don't know, but they're basing it all on work by Terrence W. Barrett, who was a guy that Bearden really liked. You hear Bearden mention Barrett a lot. And he's the one who came up with the idea for this coil and what it might do. And then George Hathaway, Blair Cleveland, and Herman David Froning, were the ones actually doing the experiment. But yeah, it seems like there's more than one way to skin a cat. But that's all you have to do. All you have to do. I'm sure it's extremely challenging, but in order to manipulate the speed of light, but manipulating the speed of light again just goes with changing gravity, and it goes with the flow of entropy, because if I'm not mistaken, time can't be perfectly measured. There's no chronons, so to speak. There's no like indiscriminately, uh, you know, measurable units of time that tick by. We just do our best to do that. And so that might be perfectly manipulable by modifying entropy. And if everything is constantly jittering around because of 0 point fluctuations, if we wanted to take our simplest way of measuring time, we might consider like an empty box, or a box that's mostly empty, but you've got a bunch of electrons in the corner. And then you start the clock, and 0 point fluctuations affect these particles in the corner, and gradually they spread out. And that would be how we could tell on the most granular scale how time is progressing, is
Which
entropy
would be,
occurring.
I agree, which would be from spin, or like the us being on a spinning planet or whatever, like spin rate would is the easiest breakdown for if somebody's like, how do you go to bat for time? And I'm like, God, that's a good question. Like, what's a measurement first? Like, how, what qualifies as a measurement of time? And like, I'll go one better. What qualifies as a measurement? Like, darn it. But spin. I agree with you, but the only way I could get a handle on it was rate of spin is what, and then kind of work from that personally.
Right.
But yeah. But I didn't mean to interrupt you. Also, sorry.
No, no, you're fine. I'm just thinking through entropy and how it's kind of indistinguishable from time in some senses. And so if you are clearing the bombardment of the vacuum and its fluctuations of light, or maybe even sending those fluctuations back to where they came from by biasing your coil with a negative DC voltage, you might be able to have, in addition to an anti-gravity effect, a sort of reverse time flow effect, which would be helpful for people's cells and damage that's occurred and genetic mutations and all that kind of stuff, sort of
Meg
going back.
entropy. Absolutely. No, for sure.
So that's kind of why, in my mind, if all of this technology exists, it's hidden because they don't want people having all of these options, because they're afraid some bozo is going to come along and destroy the planet. But I don't know. I think it's a risk we should press into and trust that people have it in their hearts to not blow ourselves up.
Oh well, I'm with you there and a few other folks. That's let the cat out of the bag, and then hopefully it's not, or at least let people figure it out for themselves anyway. Like the to your I to add as a cherry to the point on top to the point you were making, I'd say maybe that the human body can do that too. Like you might not even need to get whatever special car that you drive in to heal your body up. You could maybe sit in a field for 20 hours a day with I don't know, like a glass of structured water and say thank you. I'm maybe that would work for you, and or maybe I haven't tried that method, but
Right.
something along those lines where there's like a natural method, and I feel like that message gets squashed just as hard as like I have this tea that if you drink it, then you'll live another 70 years of your life. Like, oh my gosh, that's just as awesome as, or dangerous and awesome as drink a glass of water, and when you're in the right zone, a deer will walk up to you and then you just pet it and say thank you, and you know you're
Yeah.
good. Like, oh gosh, like both of them I believe personally probably are real, but yeah, like definitely like the word is probably not okay to spread if you had that. I don't know, but hope I'm down to learn how to, and if I do, I definitely will share.
Right. 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 Yeah. Let's hope. I we had a deer in our yard a week ago. It just showed up in our yard and then it stayed there the entire day. It was a little baby fawn. And it just hung
Really?
out with
That's
us. Our
awesome.
kids were petting it. And then its mom came and picked it up that night. But yeah, that was great.
Oh, there's a fox that follows me and my doggo around on our walks at night, so
Oh, that's cool.
that's pretty sweet too. And
Well, I'm probably gonna get going. This has been an awesome chat. Thanks for having me.
oh, thanks for having me, man. Or thanks for coming on and ripping it up so hard, man. I'm grateful. Get it recorded, and I'll post it out. Anything you want to get out for contact info or anything,
Uh, I
group
haven't
chat or.
actually d- done much on the internet. I'm probably starting like a podcast. I've been talking to some other people who are into the electrical engineering, physics, and fun stuff like that. But that's not really up yet. But you could look for it at Weird Science and Freaking Magic on YouTube. That'll be my channel. So
Oh, sweet, hell yeah, absolutely, man.
I hope my thoughts were like somewhat coherent. I have this like critic voice in my head going the whole time I'm talking, like, oh gosh, people are gonna jump on you for that. But whatever. Let's just do it. I probably was not extremely coherent or well put together with what I wanted to say, and maybe it didn't always line up logically, but hopefully it helps somebody out.
Oh, hell, I'm with it, man. I 100% agree, and I definitely not always the most super eloquent, but that, that's the whole goal. Is hopefully somebody gets a takeaway where it was like, oh crap, that totally tracks, and 1,000% with I'm with you on. I'll just throw it out there, man. Like I maybe even 10 years ago, like I might have been seeing the triangle and the tic tac in the sky, but for to just lay it out there for people like, hey, I don't know what it is. Like I'm grateful I see it, and like you've seen stuff too. Or we're not saying like this is we know for a fact this is what it is, but saying also we're not saying that we're ignoring it. So like at
Just
the
doing our
same,
best.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it was good talking to you. And let me know anytime you want to talk again. I can do this anytime. So,
Hot damn, no, absolutely. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording here, and thank you very much for coming on, man.
absolutely.